The Virgin CEO stands at the podium, cameras flashing, as she confesses everything. Yes, there is a relationship between us. Behind her, intimate photos project onto the screen evidence meant to destroy her. The black bodyguard she pleasured watches from the shadows. One press conference will either save them or end everything. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. A Virgin CEO walks in on her black bodyguard in a private moment and whispers words that will shatter every rule between them. She's built an empire on control and perfection, but has never known a man's touch. He's the silent protector hired to keep her safe from threats she doesn't even know exist. When she discovers him in his most vulnerable state, something awakens inside her that no boardroom victory could ever satisfy. What begins as forbidden temptation becomes an awakening neither can deny. But powerful enemies are circling, secrets from his military past are surfacing, and the chemistry burning between them could destroy everything they've both worked so hard to protect. When desire collides with danger and innocence meets experience, will their connection be strong enough to survive the storm ahead? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. And if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Amelia Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city lights flicker to life 47 stories below. At 32, she was the youngest CEO in Sterling Enterprises history, and she'd earned every bit of that position through ruthless dedication and sacrifice. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe chignon, her navy Armani suit without a wrinkle, her makeup flawless. Everything about her screamed control, perfection, untouchable. She was also, though no one knew it, completely inexperienced with men. There had never been time for relationships, for dating, for anything beyond the next quarterly report or merger negotiation. Romance was a distraction she couldn't afford. Physical intimacy was something other women pursued. Amelia had her empire to build. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Miss Sterling, your security detail has arrived." "Send him in," Amelia replied, turning from the window. She'd hired Isaiah Carter 3 weeks ago after the third threatening letter arrived at her office. Her board insisted on enhanced security, especially given the hostile takeover attempt by Blackwood Industries. Isaiah came highly recommended, former Marine, decorated service in Afghanistan, 6 years with an elite private security firm. On paper, he was perfect. In person, he was devastating. The office door opened and Isaiah Carter walked in, and Amelia felt her carefully controlled world tilt slightly. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark skin that seemed to glow under her office lights. His shoulders were broad beneath his perfectly tailored suit, his movements fluid and controlled. But it was his eyes that caught her, deep brown and intelligent, missing nothing. "Miss Sterling," his voice was deep with a slight southern drawl. "I'm Isaiah Carter. I'll be heading your security detail starting today." Amelia extended her hand professionally, trying to ignore the jolt of electricity when his palm engulfed hers. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming on such short notice. Just Isaiah, ma'am, and protecting you is what you're paying me for." Over the following weeks, Isaiah became a constant presence in Amelia's life. He arrived before she did each morning, checking her office, reviewing overnight security footage. He stood outside during meetings, drove her to business dinners, walked her to her car each evening. He was professional, courteous, and maintained exactly the right distance. It was driving her insane. Amelia had never been so aware of another person. She found herself noticing everything about him. The way his suit jacket stretched across his shoulders, how his hands moved with such controlled strength, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. Late at night, alone in her sterile penthouse apartment, she caught herself thinking about him in ways that made her cheeks burn with embarrassment. This was unprofessional, inappropriate, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The hostile takeover attempt intensified. Richard Blackwood, the cutthroat CEO of Blackwood Industries, increased his pressure, and the threatening letters became more specific. Isaiah recommended Amelia move into the secure penthouse suite at the top of her office building, at least temporarily. "You'll be safer here," he explained, walking through the luxurious space. "The building has 24-hour security, and I can monitor everything from the guest suite down the hall where I'll be staying." The penthouse was beautiful, all minimalist elegance and stunning views, but Amelia had never actually lived here. It was meant for entertaining clients, for impressing investors. Now it would become her temporary home. That first night, Amelia lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the building's unfamiliar sounds. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and padded to the kitchen for water, wearing only her silk nightgown and matching robe. She was halfway through her glass when she heard it, a low sound from down the hallway, from the direction of Isaiah's guest suite. Her first thought was that something was wrong, that there was an intruder. Her second thought was to get Isaiah immediately, but as she moved closer to his partially open door, she heard it again. Not pain or danger, but something else entirely. A low groan, distinctly male, heavy with pleasure. Amelia froze in the hallway, her heart pounding. She should leave. She should go back to her room and pretend she'd heard nothing. But her feet wouldn't move, and her eyes were drawn to the crack in the door. Through the narrow opening, she could see into Isaiah's bedroom. He lay on the bed, the sheets tangled around his waist, his upper body completely bare. The lamp on the nightstand cast shadows across his dark skin, highlighting every muscle, every line of his powerful frame. His head was thrown back against the pillow, his eyes closed, his jaw clenched, and his hand was moving beneath the sheet, stroking himself with slow, deliberate movements. Amelia's breath stopped completely. She knew she should leave, knew this was a massive invasion of privacy. But she couldn't look away. She'd never seen anything like this, never witnessed such raw, masculine need. Isaiah's chest rose and fell rapidly, a light sheen of sweat making his skin glisten. The movement beneath the sheets continued, steady and purposeful, and Amelia felt heat flood through her body in a way she'd never experienced. Another low groan escaped Isaiah's lips, and Amelia felt her core clench in response. Her hand came up to her throat, feeling her racing pulse, her own breathing coming faster. This was wrong. This was so incredibly wrong. But she couldn't make herself move away. Isaiah's rhythm increased slightly, his free hand fisting in the sheets beside him. "Amelia," he breathed, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. God, Amelia. He was thinking about her. The realization hit Amelia like a physical blow. Her bodyguard, her employee. The man she'd been trying so hard not to think about in exactly this way, he was lying in his bed stroking himself while thinking about her. Something inside Amelia snapped. All her carefully constructed control, all her professional boundaries, all the walls she'd built around her heart and body, they crumbled in an instant. Before she could think, before logic could override instinct, she pushed the door open wider and stepped into his room. Isaiah's eyes flew open at the sound. His hands stilled immediately, his entire body going rigid with shock. "Miss Sterling, let me finish that with my mouth," Amelia heard herself say. The words came from somewhere deep inside her, some part of herself she'd kept locked away her entire adult life. "Please." The silence that followed was deafening. Isaiah stared at her, his chest still heaving, his expression a mixture of shock, desire, and conflict. Amelia stood in the doorway in her silk nightgown, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders for once, her blue eyes locked on his. "You don't know what you're saying." Isaiah's voice was rough, strained. "You're my employer. This crosses every line. I know exactly what I'm saying." Amelia moved closer to the bed, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "I'm 32 years old, Isaiah. I've built an empire, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and commanded respect from the most powerful people in this city. But I've never touched a man. Never been touched. Never even been kissed in any way that mattered." She reached the edge of the bed looking down at him. "I've spent my entire life being perfect, being in control, being exactly what everyone expected me to be. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of being untouchable." Isaiah sat up slightly, the sheet still covering him but barely. "Amelia, you can't make decisions like this in the middle of the night. You'll regret it tomorrow." "Will I?" She knelt on the bed, bringing her face closer to his. "Or will I regret spending another night alone, wondering what it would be like to feel something real?" "You don't want your first experience to be like this." Isaiah's hand came up, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "You deserve romance. Someone who loves you, not your bodyguard taking advantage of a vulnerable moment. You're not taking advantage. I'm offering." Amelia's hand moved to rest on his bare chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palm. And I don't want romance or empty promises or someone pretending to love me for my money. I want you. I want this. I want to know what it feels like to stop thinking and just feel. Isaiah's control was visibly cracking. His hand finally made contact, cupping her face with such gentleness, it made her eyes sting with tears. If we do this, he said carefully, we do it right, not rushed, not hidden like something shameful. And you call the shots. Anything you don't like, anything that makes you uncomfortable, you say stop and we stop immediately. Understood? Understood, Amelia whispered. Then come here. He pulled her fully onto the bed, arranging them so she was sitting beside him, his back against the headboard. The sheet had fallen away, and Amelia could see all of him now, see the evidence of his arousal, and she felt simultaneously terrified and fascinated. We're going to go slow, Isaiah said, taking both her hands in his. First lesson, there's no pressure, no performance, no right or wrong way to feel. This is about discovery, about learning what feels good to you. What feels good to you? Amelia asked. Right now? Having you here, looking at me like that, knowing you want this, that feels better than anything I've experienced in years. Isaiah brought one of her hands to his lips, kissing her palm. But I need you to understand something, Amelia. What you walked in on, that wasn't just physical release. I was thinking about you. I've been thinking about you for weeks, and it's been driving me crazy trying to maintain professional distance. I've been thinking about you too, Amelia admitted. I tried not to. I told myself it was inappropriate, that you worked for me, that I should focus on business. But every time you stood outside my office door, every time you drove me home, all I could think about was what it would be like to touch you. Touch me now, Isaiah encouraged softly. However you want, wherever you want, learn me. Amelia's hand moved tentatively to his chest, feeling the solid warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart. Her fingers traced the lines of muscle, exploring the unfamiliar landscape of male anatomy. Isaiah remained still, letting her set the pace, his eyes dark with desire but patient. You're beautiful, Amelia whispered, her hand moving lower, across his defined stomach. I've never seen anything like you. The feeling's mutual. Isaiah's voice was thick with want. Do you have any idea how gorgeous you are? How many times I've imagined seeing you like this, with your hair down and that carefully controlled expression finally showing what you're feeling. What am I feeling? Like you're about to jump off a cliff and you're terrified and exhilarated all at once. That's exactly it, Amelia breathed. Her hand moved lower still, hesitating. Can I? Please, Isaiah groaned. Amelia wrapped her hand around him, feeling the heat and hardness, the way he pulsed against her palm. Isaiah's head fell back against the headboard, a low sound escaping his throat that sent shivers down Amelia's spine. Like this? She asked, moving her hand experimentally. God, yes. Just like that. Isaiah's hand covered hers, showing her the rhythm, the pressure. You're a natural. They stayed like that for several minutes, Amelia learning his body, watching his responses, feeling power and desire flood through her in equal measure. But then she remembered what she'd offered, what had brought her into this room in the first place. I want to taste you, she said boldly. Show me how. Isaiah's eyes opened, locking with hers. Are you absolutely sure? There's no rush, Amelia. We can take this as slowly as you need. I'm sure. I've been controlled my whole life. Right now, I want to do something completely wild. Something just for me. Then let me guide you. Isaiah shifted position, giving her better access. Start slow. Use your mouth however feels natural. There's no wrong way to do this, and I'll tell you what feels especially good. Amelia leaned down, her blonde hair falling forward, and took him into her mouth. The taste was foreign but not unpleasant, the feeling of having him like this incredibly intimate. She moved tentatively at first, finding her rhythm, listening to Isaiah's breathing change, feeling him respond to her touch. That's perfect, Isaiah groaned, his hand coming up to gather her hair gently, holding it back from her face so he could watch. So perfect, Amelia. You're undoing me. The praise sent warmth flooding through her. She grew bolder, experimenting with pressure and speed, using her hand in combination with her mouth the way Isaiah guided her. His responses told her what worked, the way his breathing hitched, The involuntary flex of his hips, the low sounds of pleasure that rumbled from his chest. "Amelia, I'm close," Isaiah warned after several minutes, his voice strained. "You should." She didn't pull away. Instead, she maintained her rhythm, wanting to see this through, wanting to give him the completion he'd been seeking when she walked in. Isaiah's hand tightened in her hair, not directing but holding on as if she were his anchor. His release came with a deep groan of her name, and Amelia stayed with him through it, through every pulse and shudder. When it was over, she finally pulled back, looking up at him with wonder and satisfaction. Isaiah pulled her up to him immediately, kissing her deeply, thoroughly, not caring about anything except showing her how profoundly she'd affected him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "That was," he started, then seemed unable to find words. "Incredible. Perfect. You're incredible. I've never felt anything like that," Amelia admitted. "The power of it, knowing I could make you feel that way. That's just the beginning." Isaiah pulled her down to lie beside him, wrapping his arms around her. "But we're done for tonight. This was about you exploring, learning. Not about me taking everything you're willing to give. What if I want to give more? Tomorrow. When you've had time to think clearly, to make sure this is really what you want." Isaiah kissed her forehead. "Right now, just lie here with me. Let me hold you." Amelia settled against his chest, feeling his heart rate slowly return to normal, feeling safe and cherished in a way she'd never experienced. They lay together in the dim light, and she realized this wasn't just about physical desire. This connection between them, it was something deeper, something that scared her as much as it thrilled her. "Isaiah," she whispered into the darkness, "what happens now? Now we figure this out together." His arms tightened around her. No rushing, no pressure. "We take it one day at a time and see where this leads us." "What about work? Professional boundaries?" "I'll resign as your employee. There are other security firms you can hire. But I'm not giving up on whatever this is between us." "Neither am I," Amelia said with certainty. "For the first time in my life, I want something more than success. I want you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the beginning of something neither could have predicted. Outside the windows, the city continued its endless rhythm, but inside this room, two people had found something rare and precious: connection, trust, and the courage to want more than the safe, controlled lives they'd been living. In the quiet darkness, Amelia's mind wandered through the events of the night. She'd walked into this room a woman who'd never known intimacy, who'd built walls so high that no one could reach her. She was leaving it transformed, awakened to sensations and emotions she'd only read about in books or heard other women discuss. The taste of him still lingered on her lips, the memory of his pleasure echoing through her body like aftershocks. Isaiah stirred beside her, his arms tightening instinctively even in sleep, as if afraid she might disappear. The protective gesture made her heart swell. This man, this beautiful, damaged, honorable man, had given her the greatest gift. He'd seen her vulnerability and cherished it rather than exploiting it. He'd guided her through her first intimate experience with such tenderness and patience that she felt treasured rather than used. She traced her fingers along his arm, feeling the strength there, the scars from his military service that told stories of survival and sacrifice. Each mark was a reminder that he'd lived through hell and emerged with his capacity for gentleness intact. That contradiction, the warrior who touched her like she was made of spun glass, fascinated her endlessly. The city lights flickered through the windows, casting shifting shadows across his dark skin. Amelia committed this moment to memory. The weight of his arm across her waist, the rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of skin against skin, the profound sense of rightness that came from finally letting someone past her defenses. She'd spent 32 years believing she was complete alone. Now she understood she'd merely been waiting for someone worth the risk of opening her heart. The next morning brought reality crashing back. Amelia woke in Isaiah's arms, the early sunlight streaming through the windows, and for a moment, panic seized her. What had she done? She'd thrown herself at her employee, crossed every professional boundary, acted completely out of character. Then Isaiah stirred beside her, his arms tightening around her, and he pressed a kiss to her temple. "Morning, beautiful. How are you feeling?" The tenderness in his voice, the genuine care in his expression, it melted her panic. Terrified, she admitted honestly. and absolutely certain I don't regret last night. Good, because neither do I. Isaiah sat up, pulling her with him. But we need to talk about logistics. I meant what I said about resigning. I can't lose you as my security. Not with Richard Blackwood's threats escalating. You won't lose me. I'll make sure you have the best protection available. But I can't be your employee and your... He paused, searching for the right word. My what? Amelia prompted. Whatever this is that we're building. Whatever we're becoming to each other. Isaiah cupped her face. I need there to be no question about my motives, no suggestion that I'm taking advantage of my position. The intercom buzzing from the living room interrupted them. Amelia's assistant's voice crackled through. Miss Sterling, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's been a development with the Blackwood situation. Mr. Pemberton needs to see you immediately. Reality couldn't be ignored any longer. Amelia squeezed Isaiah's hand. We'll figure this out. But first, I need to deal with whatever crisis is brewing. 2 hours later, showered and dressed in her armor of a power suit, Amelia sat in her office across from Harold Pemberton, her father's oldest friend and a senior board member. He looked grave as he slid a manila envelope across her desk. These arrived this morning. At my house, at 3 other board members' homes, and leaked to 2 business reporters. Amelia opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs, grainy but unmistakable, of her entering Isaiah's bedroom late last night. Whoever had taken them must have been watching the building, must have had access to angle the camera toward the penthouse windows. Blackwood, she said flatly. Almost certainly. Pemberton's expression was sympathetic. Amelia, I've known you since you were a child. I'm not here to judge your personal choices. But I need to know, is this relationship real, or is Blackwood fabricating something? It's real, Amelia said quietly. Very new, but very real. Then we need to get ahead of this before he weaponizes it. Pemberton leaned forward. The board will support you, but you need to control the narrative. How? Tell the truth. On your terms, in your words. Don't let Blackwood define your story. Isaiah appeared in the doorway, his expression alert. Everything okay? Pemberton studied him carefully. Mr. Carter, I presume? The man who's caused quite a stir? I'm the man who cares deeply about Amelia's safety and well-being, Isaiah replied evenly. Both professional and personal. The older man nodded slowly. Then you should both know. Richard Blackwood just called an emergency press conference. He's planning to release these photos publicly and call into question Amelia's judgment and fitness to lead this company. Amelia felt ice flood her veins. In 3 hours. Then we beat him to it, Amelia decided, her CEO instincts kicking in. Isaiah, can you get Jackson here? We need to dig into Blackwood's operation, find out how he got these photos and what else he's planning. Already on it, Isaiah confirmed. The next 3 hours were a whirlwind. Jackson, Isaiah's colleague and former military buddy, arrived with information. Blackwood had hired a private investigator to watch Amelia, clearly hoping to find ammunition for his takeover attempt. The photos were just the beginning. He had statements from disgruntled former Sterling employees, financial projections designed to make Amelia look incompetent, a whole arsenal of attacks ready to deploy. But Jackson had also found something interesting. Blackwood Industries was hemorrhaging money, on the verge of collapse. This takeover wasn't just about acquisition. It was about survival. We can expose him, Jackson suggested. Show the world that his company is failing and he's desperate. No, Amelia said thoughtfully. That just makes us look vindictive. We need a different approach. She thought about everything she'd learned in the past 12 hours, about vulnerability and honesty and the power of truth. An idea began to form. What if I don't defend myself? What if I just tell the truth and let people judge for themselves? That's risky, Pemberton warned. Everything worth having is risky, Amelia countered, looking at Isaiah. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, maintaining perfect control. Maybe it's time I showed people I'm human. 2 hours before Blackwood's scheduled press conference, Amelia called one of her own. The media room at Sterling Enterprises was packed with reporters, cameras, and curiosity. Amelia took the podium, Isaiah standing slightly behind her, a silent, supportive presence. Good afternoon, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I've called you here to address allegations that will shortly be made public by Richard Blackwood regarding my personal life. She pulled up the photographs on the screen behind her. These images show me entering the bedroom of Isaiah Carter, my head of security, late at night. They're real, not doctored. And yes, there is a personal relationship between us. The room erupted in murmurs. Amelia pressed on. What these images don't show is that Isaiah Carter is a decorated Marine veteran who has dedicated his life to protecting others. They don't show that he's a man of integrity and honor, and they don't show that he's the first person in my 32 years who's made me want something beyond corporate success. She turned to look at Isaiah, who nodded encouragingly. I've been CEO of this company for 6 years. In that time, I've increased our market value by 400%, expanded into 15 new markets, and created 3,000 jobs. I've sacrificed relationships, personal happiness, everything for this company. Amelia faced the cameras again. But I'm also a human being. I'm a woman who's allowed to have feelings, to want connection, to build a life beyond these office walls. Yes, Isaiah and I have developed a relationship. Yes, it started while he was my employee, which is why he submitted his resignation effective immediately. No one should question my competence or judgment based on my personal life, Amelia continued, her voice gaining strength. Richard Blackwood wants you to believe that a woman can't be both a successful CEO and someone with a personal life. He wants you to judge me for finding love in an unexpected place. But ask yourself, would he be making these same attacks if I were a man? She delivered her final point. Mr. Blackwood is attempting this hostile takeover because his own company is failing. Rather than face his own shortcomings, he's chosen to attack mine. But I won't apologize for being human. I won't apologize for choosing happiness alongside success. And I certainly won't sell my company to a man who thinks blackmail is an acceptable business strategy. The room exploded with questions, but Amelia had said everything she needed to say. She left the podium with Isaiah beside her, both of them walking out with heads held high. In her office afterward, they watched as social media erupted. To Amelia's shock, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Women applauded her honesty. Business leaders praised her transparency. The hashtag #StandWithSterling began trending. Even some of her harshest critics admitted that her personal life shouldn't overshadow her professional achievements. Blackwood's press conference, when it finally happened, fell flat. His attack seemed petty and desperate in light of Amelia's honest admission. By evening, it was his company's finances being questioned, his judgment being scrutinized. We did it, Amelia said wonderingly, reading through the positive coverage. We actually did it. You did it, Isaiah corrected, pulling her into his arms. You were brave and honest, and people responded to that. I couldn't have done it without you. They stood together at the windows as night fell over the city, watching lights bloom in the darkness. The battle wasn't over. Blackwood wouldn't give up that easily, but they'd won this round. More importantly, they'd done it together. Isaiah, Amelia said quietly. What you said about resigning, are you sure? Completely. Isaiah turned her to face him. I want to be with you, Amelia. Not as your employee, but as your equal. Your partner. Whatever happens next, we face it together. That sounds perfect. She lifted up on her toes to kiss him, this man who'd somehow become essential to her in such a short time. Absolutely perfect. As they kissed, the city spread out below them, full of challenges and opportunities and endless possibilities. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Amelia wasn't facing it alone. She had Isaiah, had his strength and his support and his love. And that, she realized, was worth more than any corporate empire. The next morning brought unexpected news. 3 major Blackwood Industries shareholders had pulled their support, citing concerns about the company's financial stability and the CEO's judgment. By afternoon, Blackwood's board had called for his resignation. It's over, Jackson reported, grinning. Blackwood's done. The takeover attempt is officially dead. Amelia should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt relieved and tired. So incredibly tired. Take a few days off, Pemberton suggested when he called with congratulations. You've earned it. The company will survive without you for a long weekend. So Amelia did something she'd never done before. She completely disconnected, She and Isaiah drove to a small coastal inn 3 hours away, a place with no business centers or conference rooms, just ocean views and quiet peace. They spent 3 days walking on the beach, eating at local restaurants, and learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with crises or corporate warfare. Isaiah told her about growing up in South Carolina, about his family, about the dreams he'd had before the military changed his path. Amelia shared her lonely childhood, her driven father, the pressure of always having to be perfect. On their last evening, they sat on the inn's porch watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant colors. Amelia leaned against Isaiah's chest, his arms wrapped around her, feeling more content than she could remember. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For loving me when I didn't even know how to love myself." Isaiah kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for being brave enough to walk through that door, for choosing to feel instead of just controlling everything." "Best decision I ever made," Amelia said. She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you, Isaiah Carter. I don't know when it happened or how, but I love you completely. I love you too." Isaiah's smile was tender and true. "From that first day, when I saw you at your desk, so controlled and perfect and lonely, I wanted to know the real woman underneath. And she's even more incredible than I imagined." They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, the beginning of night, but also the beginning of their future together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as partners, as equals, as two people who'd found something precious and rare. Their story had started with scandal and secrets, with forbidden desire and broken rules. But it had become something beautiful, a love built on honesty and vulnerability, on choosing connection over control, on having the courage to want more than the safe, perfect life. As stars began to appear above them and waves crashed against the shore below, Amelia and Isaiah sat together in peaceful silence, knowing that they'd found what really mattered. Not corporate success or professional achievements, but this: love, trust, and the willingness to be fully, imperfectly, wonderfully human together. And that was the greatest success of all. The return to the city brought both excitement and trepidation. Amelia and Isaiah had spent 3 blissful days at the coast, away from cameras and scrutiny, learning each other in ways that went far beyond physical intimacy. But reality waited, and with it, the consequences of the choices they'd made. Sterling Enterprises headquarters loomed before them as Isaiah pulled into the underground parking garage. Amelia took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders beneath her burgundy power suit. She'd chosen the color deliberately, bold and unapologetic, a statement that she wasn't hiding or ashamed. "Ready?" Isaiah asked, his hand finding hers across the center console. "As ready as I'll ever be." She squeezed his fingers. Together? Always together. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt both too long and too short. When the doors opened to her executive suite, Amelia found her entire senior staff waiting, led by Catherine Wu, her chief financial officer and closest thing to a friend she had in the building. "Welcome back, boss," Catherine said, a knowing smile on her face. "The board has requested a meeting this afternoon. Nothing adversarial, just updating everyone on the Blackwood situation." Amelia nodded, falling into professional mode even as she felt Isaiah's supportive presence behind her. "How bad is the fallout?" "Actually," Catherine's smile widened. "Sterling stock is up 12%. Investor confidence has never been higher. Turns out authenticity plays well on Wall Street." The morning passed in a blur of meetings and catch-up. Amelia reviewed the financial reports, approved several pending contracts, and fielded calls from industry publications requesting interviews about her stance on work-life balance and women in leadership. Each request mentioned the press conference, her honesty, her refusal to apologize for having a personal life. By noon, she'd done something she'd never managed before. She'd turned a scandal into a strength. The board meeting convened at 2 o'clock in the massive conference room with its panoramic city views. 12 board members sat around the table, their expressions ranging from supportive to cautiously optimistic. Harold Pemberton called the meeting to order. "First item. The Blackwood situation is resolved. His company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection this morning. The hostile takeover is officially dead." Pemberton looked at Amelia with something like pride. "Congratulations, Amelia. You handled an impossible situation with grace and courage." "Thank you, Harold." Amelia kept her voice steady. But I want to address the elephant in the room. My relationship with Isaiah Carter began while he was my employee. That was inappropriate, regardless of how it's been received publicly. Carter submitted his resignation before anything became public, one board member noted. And you didn't attempt to hide the relationship once it was discovered. Because I believe in transparency, Amelia replied. With my board, with my investors, with the public, I made a choice to pursue a personal relationship. I also made sure that choice couldn't compromise this company. The vote to reaffirm her position as CEO was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned, several board members approached her privately, sharing their own stories of sacrificing personal happiness for careers, expressing admiration for her courage to want both. Walking back to her office, Amelia felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of perfectionism, of constantly maintaining an impossible standard, had been lifted. She was still CEO, still successful, but now she was also human. Flawed, vulnerable, and happier than she'd ever been. Isaiah was waiting in her office, standing at the windows where she'd stood so many times before, alone and lonely. Now he turned as she entered, his smile warm and genuine. How'd it go? Better than expected. She crossed to him, letting him pull her into his arms. They're supportive. Relieved, even. Apparently I'm better at my job when I'm not trying to be perfect. Told you, Isaiah murmured against her hair. Vulnerability is strength, not weakness. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, finding peace in simple connection. Then Amelia's phone buzzed with a message that made her tense. What is it? Isaiah felt the change immediately. Richard Blackwood wants to meet. Tomorrow, neutral location. He says it's important. That's a bad idea, Isaiah said immediately, his protective instincts kicking in. He's desperate and cornered. There's no telling what he might try. Which is why you'll come with me, Amelia decided. Not as my bodyguard anymore, but as my partner. We'll hear what he has to say. The meeting was set for a small cafe in a quiet neighborhood, far from the business district where they might be recognized. Amelia and Isaiah arrived early, taking a table near the back with clear sight lines to all exits. Old habits died hard for both of them. Richard Blackwood arrived exactly on time, but he looked nothing like the polished corporate raider who'd been trying to destroy her. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, his eyes carrying the weight of defeat. He slid into the chair across from them without preamble. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. You have 5 minutes, Amelia replied coolly. Say what you need to say. Richard's hands wrapped around the coffee cup the waitress brought, as if seeking warmth. I wanted to apologize. For the photographs, for the threats, for everything. He looked at Isaiah directly. And I wanted to explain why I've spent 8 years blaming you for Marcus's death. Isaiah's expression remained neutral, but Amelia felt the tension in his body. I'm listening. Marcus was my baby brother, Richard began, his voice rough. 12 years younger than me. Our parents had him late in life, a surprise blessing. I helped raise him, taught him to ride a bike, helped him with homework, watched him grow into a good man. He looked down at his coffee. When he enlisted, I was terrified. But he was so proud, so determined to serve. I remember, Isaiah said softly. He talked about you all the time, about how successful you were, how he wanted to make you proud. Richard's eyes glistened with unshed tears. When the military came to tell my parents he'd died in Kandahar, something broke in them. My mother had a stroke 6 months later. My father followed a year after that. Marcus's death destroyed our family. I'm sorry, Isaiah said, and Amelia could hear the genuine grief in his voice. I'm so sorry for your loss, for your parents' loss. Marcus was a good soldier and a better man. I know. Richard wiped at his eyes. That's what the investigation said. That's what your commanding officer said. That's what every rational part of me knows. But grief isn't rational, Mr. Carter. Grief needed someone to blame, and you were there. You survived when he didn't. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Isaiah spoke. I think about him every day. About all of them. The men I couldn't save. For years, I believed I didn't deserve to survive, that I should have died with them. But you didn't, Richard said. You lived. And from what I've learned about you these past weeks, You've tried to honor their sacrifice by protecting others, by being the kind of man Marcus would have respected. It doesn't change what happened, Isaiah replied. It doesn't bring him back. No, but maybe it means something that you've tried to make their deaths matter. Richard looked at Amelia. I targeted your company because I was drowning. Financially, emotionally, in every way. I thought if I could destroy the man I blamed, I'd finally feel peace. Instead, I destroyed myself. What will you do now? Amelia asked. Start over. Somewhere far from here with whatever's left after the bankruptcy. Richard stood, extending his hand to Isaiah. I can't say we'll ever be friends. The pain runs too deep. But I can say I'm sorry for making you carry blame that wasn't yours to carry. Isaiah stood and took his hand. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry your family paid such a terrible price, and I hope you find peace wherever you go. After Richard left, Amelia and Isaiah sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Finally, Amelia reached across the table to take Isaiah's hand. Are you okay? I think so, Isaiah said slowly. That was, I don't know, closure maybe? Or at least the beginning of it. He didn't seem like the monster I'd built him up to be in my head, Amelia admitted. Just a broken man who lost everything and didn't know how to handle the grief. Most monsters are just broken people, Isaiah replied. That doesn't excuse what they do, but it helps explain it. They left the cafe hand in hand, stepping out into the afternoon sunshine. The weight of Richard Blackwood's vendetta had lifted, leaving space for something lighter and more hopeful to grow. Over the following weeks, Amelia and Isaiah settled into a new rhythm. He launched his security consulting firm, quickly gaining clients who valued his combination of tactical expertise and genuine care for the people he protected. She continued leading Sterling Enterprises, but with a new philosophy that valued sustainable success over relentless perfection. They moved in together, choosing a converted loft in a revitalized neighborhood rather than Amelia's sterile penthouse or Isaiah's spare apartment. The space was warm and lived in, filled with both their personalities. Isaiah's military photos found places alongside Amelia's business awards. His comfortable furniture mixed with her elegant taste. It was imperfect and wonderful. One evening, about 3 months after that fateful night when Amelia had walked into Isaiah's bedroom, they were cooking dinner together. Isaiah was teaching her how to make his grandmother's jambalaya, a recipe that required patience and attention, but was worth every moment. No, like this, Isaiah demonstrated, his arms coming around her from behind to guide her hands on the wooden spoon. You have to stir from the bottom or it'll stick. Amelia leaned back against his chest, savoring the simple domesticity of the moment. Who knew the ruthless CEO of Sterling Enterprises couldn't cook to save her life? I had people for that, Amelia replied, laughing. Besides, I was too busy conquering the business world to learn domestic skills. And now I'm learning that there's joy in the simple things. Like burning dinner with the man I love. You're not burning it. You're learning. There's a difference. They finished cooking together, the jambalaya turning out perfectly despite Amelia's inexperience. Over dinner, Isaiah grew quiet, his expression thoughtful. What's on your mind? Amelia asked, reaching across the table to touch his hand. I've been thinking about the future, Isaiah said carefully. About us, about what we're building together. And I want to make it official. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, setting it on the table between them. Amelia Sterling, you walked into my life when I'd given up on ever feeling whole again. You saw past my walls, past my guilt, past everything I used to protect myself. You chose vulnerability over control, honesty over perfection. You changed my entire world. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond. I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. Will you marry me? Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the future spread before them. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. Isaiah slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they broke apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. I never thought I'd have this, Amelia said, looking at the ring sparkling on her finger. A partner who sees me. A love that doesn't require me to be perfect. You never needed to be perfect, Isaiah replied. You just needed to be you. They made love that night with a new tenderness, a new certainty about their future. Amelia had learned so much since that first night, about her body and his, about pleasure and connection. Isaiah was an attentive teacher, patient and thorough, always making sure she felt cherished and safe. Afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Amelia traced patterns on Isaiah's chest. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "That night I walked in on you, I was terrified. Not of you, but of what I was feeling. I'd spent my whole life avoiding this kind of vulnerability. And now? Now I understand that vulnerability isn't something to avoid. It's something to embrace." She propped herself up to look at him. "You taught me that love requires courage, that real strength comes from letting people in, not keeping them out. You taught me something too," Isaiah said, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "You taught me that I deserve happiness, that surviving isn't enough, that I can honor the men I lost by actually living, not just existing in a state of permanent guilt." "We saved each other," Amelia said softly. "We did, and we'll keep saving each other, every day for the rest of our lives." The wedding took place 6 months later in a small chapel, intimate and perfect. Catherine stood as Amelia's maid of honor, having become a true friend through all the chaos. Jackson stood as Isaiah's best man, grinning like he'd orchestrated the whole romance himself. Harold Pemberton walked Amelia down the aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Your father would be so proud," he whispered before handing her off to Isaiah. "Not of your business success, though that's remarkable, but of the woman you've become, the complete, whole, happy woman standing here today." The ceremony was simple but profound. They'd written their own vows, words that came from the heart rather than tradition. Isaiah spoke first, his deep voice clear and strong. "Amelia, you are the bravest person I've ever known. You had the courage to want more than success, to risk everything for something real. You saw me not as a broken soldier but as a man worthy of love. I promise to spend every day of our life together showing you that your courage was rewarded, that choosing vulnerability over control was the right choice, that you deserve all the happiness in the world." His voice grew even more tender as he continued. "You walked into my room that night and offered me something I didn't think I deserved. Acceptance, desire, love. You gave me your innocence, yes, but more than that, you gave me your trust. You let me be the one to show you what physical love could be, and that gift humbled me then, and humbles me still. I will honor that trust every day. I will continue to cherish you, to protect you not just from outside threats but from your own doubts about being worthy of love. Because you are worthy, Amelia. You always were." Amelia's voice trembled with emotion as she replied. "Isaiah, you taught me what it means to truly live. Before you, I was successful but empty, powerful but alone. You showed me that real strength comes from connection, not isolation. I promise to be your partner in all things, to face our challenges together, to build a life that values love as much as achievement. I promise to keep choosing you, every single day, for the rest of my life." She took a shaky breath, her eyes locked with his. "You gave me something I thought I'd never have, permission to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, to be fully human. That night when I walked into your room, I was terrified. Not of you, but of my own desires, of losing control, of wanting something so desperately that it scared me. But you held me gently through that fear. You showed me that surrender isn't weakness when you're surrendering to someone who will cherish what you give them. I surrender to you now, Isaiah Carter, not as a defeat, but as a victory. The victory of choosing love over loneliness, connection over control, us over everything else." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel as they finished their vows. The love between them was palpable, something sacred and real that everyone present could feel. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was tender and true, full of promise and hope. As they turned to face their guests, hands joined, Amelia felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. The reception was held at a beautiful rooftop venue overlooking the city where they'd both worked so hard to succeed. But the view wasn't the impressive skyline. It was the faces of people who loved them, who'd supported them through scandal and struggle, who celebrated this union with genuine joy. Harold gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. "I've known Amelia since she was a little girl, too serious for her own good, always trying to be perfect." He raised his glass. But I've never seen her as happy as she is today. Isaiah, you've given her something no business success ever could. Permission to be human. For that, you have my eternal gratitude. Jackson's toast was shorter but no less heartfelt. I served with Isaiah in some of the worst places on earth. I watched him save lives, including mine. But I've never seen him as alive as he is with Amelia. To the couple who proved that love is worth fighting for. As the evening progressed and guests mingled, Amelia and Isaiah found a quiet moment together at the edge of the rooftop. The city spread before them, glittering and alive, the same city where they'd both been so lonely before finding each other. "What are you thinking?" Isaiah asked, his arm around her waist. "I'm thinking about how different my life is from what I planned," Amelia replied. "I thought success meant being CEO before 35, doubling the company's value, being perfect and untouchable. I never planned for this. Regrets? Not one." She turned in his arms to face him. "My life is so much richer now. Messier, yes. Less controlled, definitely. But infinitely better. Mine too." Isaiah kissed her forehead. "I thought my life ended in Kandahar, that I was just marking time until I could join my fallen brothers. But you gave me a reason to actually live again." They danced together as the night deepened, surrounded by friends and family, building memories that would last a lifetime. When the evening finally wound down and they left for their honeymoon, they did so knowing that they'd found something rare and precious. The honeymoon took them to a private island in the Caribbean, 2 weeks of sunshine and seclusion where they could be completely themselves. No business calls, no media scrutiny, just two people deeply in love learning to be married. Amelia discovered that Isaiah could be surprisingly playful when he wasn't in protection mode. He taught her to snorkel, laughing as she shrieked at the colorful fish. He challenged her to beach volleyball, letting her win but making it close enough that she felt accomplished. He showed her how to find joy in moments rather than constantly planning for the next achievement. Isaiah learned that Amelia's fierce intelligence extended beyond the boardroom. She was curious about everything, asking endless questions about marine life, local culture, the stars they watched from their beachfront bungalow. She approached their honeymoon the same way she approached business, with complete dedication and a desire to master every experience. One evening, they lay together in a hammock watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Amelia's head rested on Isaiah's chest, his arms wrapped around her, both completely content. "Can I ask you something?" Amelia said quietly. "Anything. That night I walked into your room, were you really thinking about me? Or did you just say that to make me feel desired?" Isaiah was quiet for a moment, his hand stroking her hair. "I was absolutely thinking about you. I'd been trying so hard to maintain professional boundaries, to not see you as anything but my client. But you'd smiled at me that afternoon, a real smile, not your CEO smile. And I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like to make you smile like that all the time." "What else did you think about?" "Everything. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. How you pull your hair down at the end of the day and it falls over your shoulders. The rare moments when you laugh and your whole face transforms." Isaiah's voice was low and intimate. "I thought about touching you, tasting you, learning every sound you make when you're lost in pleasure." Amelia shivered despite the warm evening. "And now you know all of that." "Now I know all of that, and I'm still discovering new things about you every day. That's the miracle, Amelia. You never stop being interesting, never stop surprising me." They made love in the hammock as the sun disappeared below the horizon, gentle and unhurried, savoring each sensation. Amelia had grown comfortable with physical intimacy, but it still amazed her how connected she felt to Isaiah during these moments, how their bodies communicated things words couldn't express. Later, lying tangled together on the bungalow's bed, Isaiah voiced something he'd been thinking about. "Have you thought about children?" "Sometimes," Amelia admitted. "I never did before because I couldn't imagine fitting them into my controlled, perfect life. But now, with you, I can imagine it. Little ones with your smile and hopefully your patience. And your intelligence and determination," Isaiah added. "Though God help us if they inherit both our stubborn streaks." "They'd be unstoppable," Amelia laughed. "Little CEO warriors who refuse to give up on anything." "I'd like that," Isaiah said seriously. "Not right away, but someday. building a family with you, raising children who know they're loved unconditionally, creating something that lasts beyond quarterly reports and business deals. Me too, Amelia agreed. Someday soon. They spent the rest of their honeymoon talking about that future, about the life they wanted to build together. It wouldn't be perfect, they both knew that. There would be challenges, disagreements, moments of struggle, but they'd face it all together, as partners, as equals, as two people who'd chosen love over fear. Returning to the city after the honeymoon felt different this time. They came back not as individuals who happened to be in a relationship, but as a married couple, a team, partners in every sense of the word. They moved through their days with a new synchronicity, supporting each other's work while building their personal life. 6 months after the wedding, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. The news came as both a shock and a joy. She'd been so careful about birth control for so long that the idea of creating a life hadn't felt real until she saw those 2 pink lines. Isaiah's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He cried, actually cried, holding her and whispering about how blessed they were, how their child would be so loved. He immediately started planning, researching everything from prenatal vitamins to the best pediatricians, approaching fatherhood with the same thorough dedication he brought to everything. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Amelia continued working through most of it, though she'd learned to delegate more, to trust her team. She attended every doctor's appointment with Isaiah, watching his face light up at each ultrasound, each heartbeat, each update on their growing child. They learned they were having a girl, and Isaiah was overcome with emotion. A daughter, he kept saying, wonder in his voice. We're having a daughter. She's going to have you wrapped around her finger from day one, Amelia teased. Absolutely, Isaiah agreed without shame. And she'll deserve it. They prepared the nursery together, painting the walls a soft yellow, assembling furniture, hanging pictures. Amelia found joy in these domestic tasks, in creating a space for their daughter, in building the family she'd never thought she'd have. 7 months into the pregnancy, Amelia went into early labor. It was terrifying and overwhelming. The sudden rush to the hospital, the fear that something was wrong. Isaiah never left her side, holding her hand through contractions, coaching her breathing, being exactly what she needed. Their daughter, Emma Grace Carter, was born weighing 5 pounds 2 ounces, tiny but perfectly healthy. When the nurses placed her in Amelia's arms, both parents wept with joy and relief. She was beautiful, with dark skin like Isaiah and light eyes that would probably change, but for now looked just like Amelia's. You did it, Isaiah whispered, kissing Amelia's sweaty forehead. You're amazing. We did it, Amelia corrected, looking down at their daughter. We made this perfect little person together. The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, the constant worry that every new parent feels. But through it all, Amelia and Isaiah supported each other, taking turns with feedings, sharing the load, building their family one day at a time. Amelia took maternity leave, something she'd never imagined doing. For 3 months, she stepped away from Sterling Enterprises, trusting Catherine and her team to handle everything. And the company didn't fall apart. It actually thrived, proving that Amelia's worth wasn't measured solely by her constant presence. When she did return to work, it was part-time at first, finding a balance between her role as CEO and her role as mother. It wasn't easy, but with Isaiah's support and her team's understanding, she made it work. She'd learned that having it all didn't mean being perfect at everything. It meant being present, being authentic, being willing to ask for help when needed. Emma's first birthday arrived too quickly, as these milestones always do. They celebrated at their loft, surrounded by friends and family. Harold Pemberton held Emma with tears in his eyes, telling her stories about her mother's business triumphs. Catherine and Jackson argued good-naturedly about whose turn it was to change the next diaper. As Amelia watched Isaiah playing with their daughter, watched Emma's face light up at her father's smile, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her life looked nothing like she'd planned. It was messier, more chaotic, less controlled. It was also infinitely richer, fuller, more meaningful than anything she'd imagined. That night, after Emma was asleep and the guests had gone home, Amelia and Isaiah stood together at their loft windows, looking out at the city lights. Isaiah's arms came around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. Happy? He murmured against her hair. Happier than I ever thought possible, Amelia replied honestly. You know what's funny? I spent years thinking I had to choose between success and happiness, between career and family. Turns out I just needed to find someone who understood that I could have both. You've built something remarkable, Isaiah said. Not just sterling enterprises, though that's impressive. But this, our life, our family, our home. You've created something that will last long after quarterly reports are forgotten. We created it, Amelia corrected. Together. Together. Isaiah agreed, kissing the top of her head. They stood there in comfortable silence, the city glittering below them, their daughters sleeping peacefully in the next room, their future stretching before them full of possibility and promise. The journey that had started with scandal and forbidden desire had become something beautiful and lasting. Amelia thought about that night, walking into Isaiah's bedroom, saying words that shocked even herself. Let me finish that with my mouth. The memory still made her blush, but it also filled her with joy. That moment of courage, of vulnerability, of choosing to feel instead of just controlling everything. It had changed her entire life. She'd stopped being the Ice Queen CEO who sacrificed everything for success. She'd become a complete person, a leader, yes, but also a wife, a mother, a friend. She'd learned that perfection was overrated and that real strength came from being fully, authentically human. Isaiah had changed too. The guilt-ridden soldier who couldn't forgive himself had become a devoted husband and father, a successful businessman, a man who'd learned that he deserved happiness and love. Together, they'd healed each other, built something beautiful from their shared brokenness. As they prepared for bed that night, Amelia caught sight of her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who'd stared into this same mirror 2 years ago. She had laugh lines now, proof of joy. Her hair wasn't always perfectly styled. She often had baby spit up on her shoulder. She was imperfect, messy, wonderfully human, and she'd never been happier. Isaiah appeared behind her in the mirror, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? About how far we've come, Amelia replied. About that scared woman who walked into your room 2 years ago, desperate to feel something real. Best decision you ever made, Isaiah said with a smile. Best decision we ever made, Amelia corrected. We chose each other. We chose vulnerability over control, love over loneliness, connection over perfection. And we'll keep choosing each other, Isaiah promised. Every day for the rest of our lives. They climbed into bed together, Emma's baby monitor on the nightstand, tomorrow's responsibilities waiting, but not worrying them. They had each other. They had their daughter. They had a love that had survived scandal, overcome obstacles, and grown stronger through every challenge. As Amelia drifted off to sleep in Isaiah's arms, she thought about all the women out there who believed they had to choose between success and love, between career and family, between being perfect and being happy. She hoped her story might give them courage to want both, to believe they could have both, to understand that vulnerability was strength and love was worth the risk. The city outside their windows continued its endless rhythm, full of lonely people and late-night workers, driven professionals and searching souls. Somewhere out there, maybe another woman was realizing she wanted more than success, more than perfection, more than the safe, controlled life. Maybe she'd find the courage to take a chance on something real. Amelia hoped she would, because the rewards were worth every moment of fear, every loss of control, every vulnerable confession. Love, real love. The kind that saw you completely and cherished you anyway, that was the greatest success of all. And with that thought, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, Amelia Carter drifted into peaceful sleep, knowing that her story had a happy ending after all.